a mysterious body that was found on the serene shores of Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia. It was December 1948, and a perfectly dressed man wearing polished shoes was lying against the sea wall. The guy was dead, but the reason for death was a mystery. Authorities initially suspected heart attack as a possible cause of death, or maybe it was something more sinister like poison. However, the autopsy showed no signs of poison. There was no wallet or any other clue of his identification. Even all the tags from his clothing were mysteriously snipped off as if someone deliberately erased his signs of identification. But you know what was the weirdest part? When they took his fingerprints to unlock the mystery, it yielded nothing. The fingerprints were completely untraceable, like something out of a spy movie. So, investigators published the photo of the dead body in the newspapers, but still, no one claimed to recognize him. After 4 months of investigation, detectives found a clue. There was a hidden pocket sewn inside the trousers of the man. In that pocket, they found a rolled-up piece of paper from a book called The Rubaiyat, which was a very rare book at the time. On that paper, just 2 haunting words were written: Taman Shud, which means it has ended. Now, the hunt was on for exactly that book, but after months of hunting, they didn't find anything. So, they sadly buried the poor Somerton man without giving him any name. However, in case they needed clues later, they did make a cast of his head and embalmed him. After 8 months, something unexpected happened that reopened the case. A guy walks into the police station and says he has the exact copy of Rubaiyat. He claimed that he got the book in his car that was parked near Somerton Beach shortly after the body was found. But he didn't think much of it until he saw a newspaper article about the case. And yes, the book had that torn page, and it matched the piece of paper from the dead body's trousers. Inside the book, they found another clue, a weird code along with a phone number. The phone number led them to a woman named Jessica Thompson, who lived nearby. During her interview, she got all confused and nearly fainted when she saw a bust of the Somerton man, but refused to recognize him. She did, however, admit to selling the Rubaiyat to a man named Alfred Boxall. But all the curiosity of detectives turned into frustration when Alfred Boxall was discovered alive and well, having the very same book Jessica claimed to have sold him. And that strange code? Well, no one has cracked it to this day. Who was the dead man on Somerton Beach, and what secrets did he carry? The answers remain locked in that mysterious code. It was a cold November day in 1971 when a man identified as Daniel Cooper embarked on a journey that would go down in history as one of the most audacious and bewildering mysteries of all time. A man in his mid-40s purchased a $20 one-way ticket and blended seamlessly into the crowded Northwest Airlines Flight 305 from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. Cooper was described as being dressed in a sharp business suit, a trench coat, and brown shoes, carrying a brown paper bag and a briefcase. As the flight took off, Cooper casually ordered a bourbon and a soda from a flight attendant. But little did she know, this seemingly routine flight was about to take a jaw-dropping twist. After a few minutes, Cooper handed a note to the flight attendant. She didn't pay much attention at first and just put it in her pocket. It was then that he leaned in and whispered, "Miss, you better look at that note. I've got a bomb." Those words were enough to get the attention. Cooper asked her to sit with him and opened his briefcase. There was a bunch of red sticks all tangled up in a web of wires. The flight attendant was now scared, and she scrambled to jot down his demands. He wanted her to write something and then pass it to the captain. So gripped by fear, she wrote down what he wanted, and it was a list that would shake up everyone on the plane. The list included $200,000 cash, that's also exclusively in $20 bills, put in a knapsack, and he wanted all that money by 5 p.m. He also demanded for 4 parachutes, 2 back and 2 front. Then he wrote that when they land, he wants a fuel truck ready to refuel, and he warned that he would do his job if anything went against him. The response was swift, and the authorities scrambled to comply with Cooper's demands. FBI agents gathered the ransom money from multiple Seattle area banks, while local police hastily secured the parachutes from a nearby skydiving school. Once Cooper believed his demands were met, he permitted all the passengers to exit the plane. He also allowed some of the crew to leave, but he was not done yet, so he ordered the remaining crew to stay. He told them to fuel up the plane and head for Mexico City, all the while insisting on staying below 10,000 feet. During this harrowing flight, Cooper put on some dark wraparound sunglasses that would become famous in the investigation of this case. Then, a little after 8 p.m., somewhere between Seattle and Reno, Nevada, Cooper executed a daring, almost supernatural vanishing act. Armed with 2 parachutes, he grabbed the money and jumped out of the plane's back door, disappearing into thin air. And here's where the mystery begins. Even after more than 40 years of searching, nobody ever saw him again. Who was D.B. Cooper? What happened to him after he jumped? All the answers remain buried in mystery. Many speculate that Cooper may not have survived. Why? Because the winds at that altitude exceeded 200 miles per hour. Steering that parachute would have been a nightmare. Most probably, he would have landed in some rugged, heavily wooded terrain. Over the years, the investigation had its moments of hope, including the discovery in 1980 when a curious boy stumbled upon a decaying package containing $5,800. He found that package buried near the Columbia River in the north of Portland and almost 32 kilometers away from Ariel. All the money was in those $20 bills, and the serial numbers matched those of the ransom. But despite extensive efforts, they couldn't find anything else. After years of chasing shadows, in 2016, the FBI officially closed its investigation into the Cooper case, redirecting its resources towards other cases. Yet, the legend of D.B. Cooper lives on, inspiring countless songs, books, and movies that continue to captivate the world of crime, mystery, and thriller. In the shadowy streets of Los Angeles on a fateful day, January 15, 1947, the city was plunged into a sinister mystery that continues to haunt everyone for decades after. This is the haunting story of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, known as the Black Dahlia. Imagine stumbling upon something that sends shivers down your spine. Elizabeth Short's lifeless body was discovered on a creepy street called 3800 South Norton Avenue. But here's the really creepy part. Her body was gruesomely sliced in 2 parts, and she looked as pale as a ghost. In fact, the person who found her first actually thought she was a lifeless mannequin. Yeah, that's how scary it was. But this was not just ordinary murder. It was like something from a horror movie. The killer was insanely careful, like a surgeon who cut her up so neatly that her internal organs and bones were untouched. And you know the scariest part? The chilling detail on her face, this terrifying smile carved from her mouth to her ear. What makes it even more strange is the absence of blood at the crime scene. It led investigators to speculate that the body had been moved after she was killed. As if scripted by a madman, things got even stranger. 9 days later, a creepy envelope was delivered to the newspaper office. It was made using individual letters cut and pasted out from magazines and newspapers, conveying a message. The Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles paper. Here is Dahlia's belongings, letter to follow. True to the sender's word, the envelope held some haunting items. Elizabeth Short's social security card, birth certificate, some photographs, some names written on a paper, and an address book with some pages torn out. And the name Mark Hansen was embossed on the cover of that address book. The killer was cunning enough to wipe away any trace of fingerprints by cleansing all those items with gasoline. But the story didn't end there. Another twist emerged on March 14th when a note written with a pencil was found inside a shoe near the ocean at the foot of Breeze Avenue in Venice. The note said, "To whom it may concern, I have waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way out for me. I couldn't help myself for that or this. Sorry, Mary." The West Los Angeles police station was alerted, but that pile of clothing that included a blue herringbone tweed coat and trousers, a brown and white shirt, white jockey shorts, tan socks, and size 8 tan moccasin shoes could figure out the identity of their owner. Despite many suspects and countless leads, the identity of the Black Dahlia's killer remained a mystery that still gives people the creeps. This terrifying story even inspired a novel in 1987 and a haunting movie in 2006 featuring Josh Hartnett, Hilary Swank, Aaron Eckhart, and Mia Kirshner. But the real-life crime remains unsolved, haunting the dark alleys of history for over 70 years. In the heart of Wall Street, during the lunch hours of a crisp September day in 1920, something sinister was hidden beneath a deceptively peaceful facade. A regular-looking guy steered a horse-drawn cart just in front of the formidable USSA office, right across from the famous JP Morgan building. No one noticed him, and he abruptly stopped his cart, descended, and without a trace, vanished into Wall Street's lunchtime crowd. Within a few moments, things took a sinister turn. The cart explodes, raining metal fragments and chaos onto the street, claiming the lives of more than 30 innocent souls at the moment. Over 300 others were left injured and scarred, their lives forever altered by this horrible incident. In those chaotic moments, people thought it was just a random accident. Maintenance crews worked like mad overnight, cleaning the damage and unknowingly sweeping away any evidence that could have led to the perpetrator. At the dawn of the next day, the busy Wall Street was back in business, and everyone was scratching their head. Conspiracy theories swirled in the wind, but the heroes of the story, the New York Police and Fire Departments, the Bureau of Investigation, and the United States Secret Service were determined to solve the case. The investigators and officials were actively working on the case, but this puzzle wasn't easy to solve. Every lead that investigators followed was like chasing a shadow in the dark. Even after talking to hundreds of people who were around that day, no relevant clues were found. But just when things seemed hopeless, a glimmer of hope emerged, and that lead had actually come before the blast. A mailman found 4 weird flyers in the Wall Street vicinity, demanding the release of political prisoners, signed by the American anarchist fighters. The catch here was the letters on those flyers seemed a lot like the ones used in bombings led by Italian anarchists the year before. Sounds like something out of a thriller, right? So, our heroes start tracing the origins of the flyers. Sounds promising, but they found themselves entangled in a web of false leads. Investigators suspected that the followers of the notorious Italian anarchist Luigi Galliani were involved in the blast, but it couldn't be proven. The main guy, Luigi Galliani, had already left the country. Within 3 years, all the promising leads turned out to be useless, and once hopeful trails devolved into cryptic dead ends. Why were those shadowy culprits behind the Wall Street bombing? What were their motives? These questions remain unanswered to this day, waiting for someone brave enough to seek the truth. In the heart of downtown Los Angeles, a spooky riddle unfolded in the mysterious corridors of the Cecil Hotel. It was January 26, 2013, when a young Canadian traveler named Elisa Lam embarked on a journey that would end in the most bewildering of mysteries. When 21 years old, Elisa checked into the Cecil Hotel with dreams of adventure. She had no idea that her stay at this seemingly ordinary hotel would turn into a haunting history. It all seemed normal until she didn't check out on February 1st as per schedule, and her parents heard nothing from her. Panic set in, and her worried parents called the cops. 18 days passed, and no one knew where she had gone. It was February 19th when Elisa Lam's lifeless, naked body was discovered floating inside a water tank on the hotel's rooftop. How? Well, it all started with guests complaining about the discolored water and a foul taste, with unusual water pressure. The hotel's manager revealed something really strange. He said that when Elisa first arrived, she shared a room with fellow travelers, but was later moved to her own isolated chamber because her roommates couldn't handle her odd behavior and complained about it. Now, the last time anyone saw her was on a surveillance camera inside an elevator. Her final moments captured by camera would haunt anyone investigating the case. In that super weird footage, Elisa appeared as though she was hiding from something or someone. She was waving her hands around and whispering words like she was trying to communicate with an invisible friend. Spooky, right? The whole incident led to different speculations. Was she under the influence of some crazy drugs? Well, it turned out that Elisa did take medications for her bipolar disorder, and the overdose could have contributed to her death. But nope, the toxicology report showed 0 drugs or alcohol in her system. Then, was it a murder? Well, again, the autopsy report didn't show any signs of physical trauma. So, what was the reason for her death? And one disturbing question lingered, unanswered. How did she find her way to the forbidden rooftop? And how did she manage to close a 20-pound lid on that water tank all by herself, leaving no trace behind? No one could solve the puzzle to this day. What wicked forces conspired to claim her young life? And will the truth ever emerge from the depths of darkness? We never know, but the case of Elisa Lam remains a haunting story that refuses to be forgotten.